Okay.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is your host, Arti Solanki, and today is our very exciting day because this is our very first episode for the Global Desi Women, and we're going to bring absolutely wonderful topics related to specifically Indian women with where it doesn't matter in what part of the world you're from, but obviously we are different from our mothers or our grandmothers, and we're going to bring different topics related to that. Um, I first want to welcome my co-host, and we have on our panel today Vinoo Palicha, Bhavana Shelley, and Natasha Gandhi. Just to give you a little bit references that we all come from different age groups and also different backgrounds. And so it's going to be very interesting on as far as our thoughts and our discussion goes. So I hope you enjoy the show. And today's topic we have picked as intergenerational dialogue. And I mean, just that category itself has so many different topics that we can talk on. But we want to get started, obviously, with our cultural heritage and traditions. Before we get deep into it, I'll hand over to Vinu, and then Bhavna and Natasha. They can all introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can start the conversation on this topic.
Okay.
Vinu?
Hi. My
Hello.
name is Vinoo Palicha, and I am the oldest in this group. Um, so something about myself, been married for 30 plus years, have two married daughters. Uh, I've worked in a corporate for a little bit, worked as a real estate agent for a little bit, and now I'm a small business owner.
Awesome. Awesome. Welcome to the show, and I really appreciate your time. Hand
Thank
over
you.
to Bhavna Shelley.
Hello, my name is Bhavana Shelley. I am in central New Jersey area, and I've been married more than 30 plus years, so same thing.
Ooh.
But I have one daughter that is already married recently, and my son is about to go to law school. So um, my journey here in US started with working as a staff accountant to controller, and now I manage the consulting team here, I have a team of consultants who are specialized in ERP implementations. And I've been working since last 24 years for this company, and I'm happy.
Awesome. Awesome. That's awesome. Natasha Gandhi. And just to let people know that she's also my daughter. So we're going to get a lot of, you will hear a lot of difference between my thinking and her thinking. So that's why we always try to bring one young person.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natasha, and like my mom said, I am her daughter. I am 27 years old, so I'm also the youngest one on this panel today as a guest. I've been married for a little bit over a year, and my background is in software engineering. I started off after graduating, I started off as a consultant. But now I work at a company just specializing in iOS development. And I've been there for the last 2 years now. And yeah, excited to get into it with all these ladies today about intergenerational differences between my generation and their generation, how we feel about cultural heritage and traditions.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure it's you know, like you said, it's a topic that you'll hear a lot, and it's okay if you say tell us that, you know, you with the older women. It's okay. We used to say hearing that part. So I'm gonna start right at with you because you're the youngest on the panel today. And so how do you feel with this topic of cultural heritage? Because I know I'm not as much into it as my mom used to be, and maybe she was a little bit less than what her mom probably was. But when it comes to sticking to our traditions, and being a first generation born outside of India, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like everyone's experience is going to be different based on their parents, but in my case, I feel pretty blessed to you say that you feel like you haven't done that great of a job, but I would actually counter that point and say that you have.
Oh,
Um,
awesome. I feel so good.
just on the basis that I can speak the language. I think that's a huge thing right out the gate. I know a lot of people, even just first generation, you would think that they would know how to speak the language, but a lot of people don't, that are my age. So I think that's like a huge thing that I am grateful for you and my and dad to pass down to me and Keishan. And then another thing is in terms of cultural heritage and traditions, we might not always know the exact reason behind some of the traditions that we have,
Mhm.
but I still feel like I'm aware of them. Like I'm aware of the different traditions we have.
Yeah, but
And
do you ever feel like we have been like posing on to you like, hey, this is what, like, it's because a lot of times I'm sure Bhavana and Vinoo would agree to it, like kids kind of don't like these days, like, hey, I don't care what this culture is or what this ritual is, or you know what I'm saying.
Actually, I don't think they feel imposed on, is because I think the way we put our culture or our some of the rituals as if it's is the way of life. So since they are little, they've learned that there is a temple in the house itself, and the elders are actually bowing to the gods and stuff like that. If you're leaving the house, you're supposed to say, "Oh, Jai Shri Krishna."
Mm.
It has created kind of a way of life rather than imposing on them, because they've been seeing it, what their elders do, and they've been looking at it and then following it, most of it. There
I
are questions, there are things that are
Right.
questionables, and those questionable comes forward, and they do ask us. Sometimes we do have answers for that, sometimes we just don't, but certain things we do because that's what we've been taught. And
Yeah.
then we're teaching them. If they like it, they do it. If they don't like it, that's their opinion and that's their choice.
I
And I
would
think we're pretty much open to that at this age because we're here. Kind of. That's what I feel like.
I would also say that it kind of changed as I grew up. When I was younger, I was a lot more not against, but like I would question things a lot more than I do now. For example, like anytime my mom would send Indian food with us to lunch at school, like that was not something I liked. I didn't really appreciate the culture of like eating Indian food at school because let's be honest, it's not the most nice smelling food to take to a school where there's like American people are having, like their sandwiches or whatever. But now the things have shifted completely. It's like a 180. Like anytime I get to have Indian food or a home cooked meal from my parents, like I truly appreciate it. And I'm actually even constantly like calling her up, asking her for recipes and like making Indian food at home. So I think even though we may not appreciate it when we're younger, kind of like kind of exposing us to those types of cuisines and that culture at a young age lets us kind of assimilate to it to when we're older. And now, like, I'm at the stage in my life where I crave that. Like, I want to dive deeper into my culture because I didn't appreciate it when I was younger. But now, like, I'm, I have like a stronger sense of identity. I have a stronger sense
Yeah.
of who I am. And I want to learn more about like where we came from. So I'm going to tap into that culture we have.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I'm going to add one point to what Bhavna said also, that before, when we were growing up, we never thought of questioning anything. We did what we were told. Nowadays, kids will also like, they want to know why.
Yes.
But for us, we grew up like we were told to do this. Okay. And we did it.
Yeah.
And we just grew up with it.
Yeah.
We weren't
And that is,
allowed to ask questions.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was just about to say that, I think our generation is the only generation where we still listen to our parents and not question them. And we also listen to our kids because we know that they're a lot more different than us. But for them, it's so much difference because when
We're
we
like a sandwich.
yeah, we are in a sandwich. I think we're the only generation that we listen to both the different generations, but uh our parents don't listen to us and our kids don't listen well, I wouldn't say
Exactly.
entirely that the kids don't listen,
But yeah.
but you know what I'm trying to say is like it's so much difference between those two.
Yeah.
And ours is the only one that I guess we are the good kids.
That and that is a generational difference, right? Because we used to listen to everything we were told to do without questioning it. But now when we are old enough to, or maybe in that time when we want to tell our kids what we were told, our kids are like, no, why? We want to do it this way. You
Yeah.
can go ahead and do it this way, but we want to do it this way. So yeah, I too feel that it's like a sandwich. We're like, okay, we adjusted before and we're adjusting now.
Yep.
Certain understandings of certain rituals are so rigid in a way that it only applies to women most of the time, doesn't apply to men. Okay, that part of our culture is something that our next generation, our kids, really don't appreciate, and they don't want to follow it. When it is like, oh, only women, this applies to only women, and there are certain things, certain rituals that it only applies to women and they are only supposed to do that certain things. That part of that understanding, that we took it because we were told and we were taught, but it is a hard time for our kids to understand that why we don't have to do this, because there is a gender equality that they believe in, and it's not going to jive with them. I can give one of the example with wedding ceremonies. When it is time to do a Khanda Saubhagyavati, these kids these days, they go on Google, they search things, and they really want to learn the meaning behind it. And for us, it's a blessing, but for them is, why are you blessing me that I should die before my husband do? So those things are something that it's very questionable, and those questions comes right out.
Yeah, and that's such a huge thing, right? Like we never even thought of it in that sense, or we never thought of like, we actually thought like, yeah, of course, I want to die before my husband. But Natasha is like, whatever.
Well, when we were getting married, we barely knew the detailed meaning of like each pera.
Oh, yes.
Right? Every circle around the fire, we did it just because we know we have to do it. We knew Sat Peras, this, that, everything we knew. But now it's like they get a detailed explanation of what each pera means.
Yeah.
And
So they have
know.
a choice. Yeah, they have a choice between all the things that are done in the ceremony. Oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do bidai. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. No father giving away the daughter because it's different now.
Yep.
For
Kanyadan
us-
is another one.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yes, that is a big one.
Huge one.
For us, it was a very emotional thing in those days, in a big thing. And now it's like,
Yeah.
not doing that.
No. So
It's a whole different thing.
Yeah. So how much of this tradition or like rituals, Natasha, you think that you'll be able to carry forward, or would you like to carry forward?
Yeah.
You just want to just let it go. That's the other question. Would you just like to?
That's a huge ask and a huge question, right? Like, I don't know what I'm actually going to be able to like carry on with my future kids and what I'm not, but I'm not going to let it go. I'm not going to just throw
Right.
everything out the window.
Right.
But like I said, like I'm at the stage in my life where I'm like wanting to learn more and more about my culture. So I'm fully intending to pass on whatever I can to my children, but of course things are going to be tweaked as generations come because of equality, things that you might believe in, I might not believe in. So I might not pass certain things on to my children that you passed on to me. And I think it's just going to adapt with the time. Like,
and I think we all did. We all adapted with time because, like I said in the beginning, we're not the same as like my mom used to be.
Right.
And I think Vinoo came along when she was also very young, and same thing. I came when I was a teenager as well. So it's a different thing when you come from raised in India with where there's all these rituals and cultural things are followed, and you don't even realize because you've been raised in that environment, right? So you don't even think like, oh, this is our cultural thing or this is our ritual. Though when you come outside the country, that's when you really start to, I think for us, our generation, because we came from India, we felt like we want to save or we want to hold on to it as much as possible. And I think that's why some of us actually, not everybody, I would say, but a lot of us, we felt like, okay, we need to adapt this because we need to save this and then only we'll be able to pass it to our kids. So I think that was the thought process for us,
And to that effect,
go ahead, Vinoo, sorry.
And to that effect, I'll just say that when we came here in those days, we didn't have that many options. Now these kids have a lot more options. So they don't have to really hold on to it. They can learn it. They have it they have it available. They can learn it. And when they want, they get it. But for us, we had to hold on to those things because nothing
and
was.
Also, we didn't have Google. So whoever taught us, that's what we kept on doing. We didn't have like, okay, let's research this unless you picked up one of the, spiritual books or scriptures and then you read it, then you know that, okay, okay, you're supposed to follow this. But otherwise, we just did whatever our parents taught us. So that's a lot more.
I would say with the passing on, one of the important thing that our kids should pass on is at least the part of the language, when it is so important to not lose that. Some of the rituals, whether you do puja in a certain way or you don't do puja in a certain way, that really at the end of the day is not as much of an barrier to move forward. But if you continue and keep your language alive, that actually makes it that culture live on with the future generations. And then that's important. I know any part of the Gujarati or any other Hindu calendar, these kids don't even know what they are even now. Half of us can't keep up with them, right? So that's not going to stay there. Some of the rituals, some kids do like a little bit of mandir in their house, and they probably might worship or go to the mandir here and there and understand our gods and the culture behind it and the rituals. Of course, there's going to be plenty of priests around, even in the next generation, that's going to continue help them do the rituals that we normally do. But the language is the biggest thing. Teach your kids our language, which
mother tongue is very important.
helps.
Absolutely.
And it keeps them smart. I mean, think about it. If you only know one language, and if you know more languages, you're much ahead of someone else who only knows one language. So that's something that, Natasha, I would tell your generation, and speak language at home until the kid is 5 years old. Just talk in our language at home and it will go a long way. That's one piece of thing that we should definitely keep up with.
Yeah, that's something Pratik is my husband, have actually discussed, that from right now, we're gonna try to start speaking more Gujarati at home, even when it's just us two. To make it
Because
into
he needs a little bit of practice.
he actually speaks Gujarati more often than I do, just with his parents in general, because everything that they communicate in their house is always in Gujarati. For us, mom, like it's very mixed match. Like sometimes you speak to me in English, sometimes you'll speak to me in Gujarati, but regardless of what you're speaking, I will tend to speak back to you in English. Whereas for him, it's always just been Gujarati. So his grammar might not be the best, but
Yeah.
I think
But at least he speaks, yeah.
at least he speaks the language. And I think that if we start doing it at home, we're only going to improve, right? And so by the time we do have kids, if we keep that practice up, we're sure that, especially of course, like with the help from you and then his parents, like I'm sure they will know Gujarati, but I think the key is to maintain it over a long period of time and not just when they're young. Because I know a lot of kids my age will say like, oh yeah, like I used to know it when I was little, and now they don't.
That's Kishan, my son.
can't.
He used to speak very fluently, but now he's like,
Oh, really?
he
They
can't.
lose it.
Yeah,
They lose it.
he has
You lose
complete.
the practice, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's up to the kid though, like they also kind of need to have like that vested interest. So I think it's important to have a community of people around you that are from a similar background to enable you to kind of like practice those things and tap into that culture. And I was grateful enough to grow up around so many other Gujarati people that it was almost like second nature and instinct to like want to know like, hey, like what's the deal with like Garba, and what's like I need to learn how to do this dance, and I need to learn how to speak the language if I want to hang out with like these group of people and my friends. Like it almost became something I wanted to do to kind of like feel like I'm a part of that community. So I don't think it's necessarily always just on the parents, right? Like it's also about finding people to bring those cultures and values together as a whole. So
yeah. That is so true, because I feel like I always say whenever I visit New Jersey that there are too many Indians, and like, there's you can hear Gujarati and or Hindi and on the streets, and it's so much different over there. And when you come to Houston, there's like you can barely see there are many Indians here too, but it's not
There are,
as much as like you see in New Jersey. So hanging out with the group of your own community, and then that helps. But that I wanted to touch base on Vinu and Bhavana, like when we came and when we were raising kids, since we are talking about passing on our culture and rituals to the next generation. When we were raising our kids, I specifically had that in back of my mind that like, yeah, I really wanted them to learn our religion, our culture, and our traditions. And I know I used to tell them bedtime stories about all different gods, and I used to tell them, take them to temples, and I used to put them in like temple schools, and I tried so many different things because I felt like I was so nervous that, oh my God, I hope my kids don't lose this, And so I think that was the part of my thinking that was going on when they were little. But I feel like as they were growing up, and as I saw that they've turned into such a beautiful, amazing kids, that it made me at ease actually afterwards. Before, when they were little, I was going crazy. But how did you guys feel it? And how did you cope with like that time when you were having the kids were little, basically?
Winnie, you want to go?
Okay, I'll go. Mine is going to be a shorter version. So when we moved here, we moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which was a small town in those days. And they had the temple, the Gujarati Samaj. So that kind of helped when they had religious events, and we used to take the kids for pujas and stuff. And then sometimes when we have puja at home. So I just tried my best. I wasn't very good with like what you said, like taking them for different classes and stuff. So we did not have that option. By the time we had that option, we were ready to move out of Baton Rouge, but they didn't get to do that. But yes, whatever we did at home, they did get to participate. And then the Gujarati Samaj temple, where they used to go for certain religious events. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
For us, it was a little different. First of all, we're from New Jersey, so it's a condensed area with lots of Indians, and I think I am. I feel it's a positive thing, is because our, just like how Natasha said, that she was surrounded with friends that were Indian and with the same culture, same kind of ritual, same type of family environment around. So it was not a shocker to when you go to school, oh, they do this, we never do that, or something like that. They all are in the same boat. They all have the same type of parents who go crazy when your grades aren't good. So it's it's all the same, but at the same time, like, we have readily available so many cultural things to make our kids experience, with the temples, with annual community gatherings, when we call it motso, where for at least 2-3 months the community kids are getting together, they're practicing dances to perform at the motso. So it's and of course the religious classes that they can go to, they went to the dance classes, the Bharatanatyam and stuff like that, with their friends and everything, and they made all most of my kids, all of their friends are Indian. They didn't even have any interrelation, other caste or other people as their friends, because this is what they surrounded with, and then because it's heavily condensed with Indian community.
Yeah. And I think the advantage for you, Bhavna, was also that you had your in-laws living with you. And so that's why
Mm.
the grandparents make so much of a huge
Big
difference in the
impact.
kids' lives when they're growing up, because what we cannot teach them, they can really, teach them. And when Natasha was like, I think 4 years old, we moved out, so they were not with the grandparents, but my parents lived very close by, so they were very fortunate to be very close to my parents. So, and I think we knew also her kids' grandparents were in India and everything, so
Yeah.
but Bhavna had that advantage of like grandparents, so that makes a huge difference. I feel like that's a
Big
totally
impact.
a blessing.
Yes, it does. It does.
It does. It makes a big difference. I mean, and they're so connected with the grandparents. They talk language, they speak in the same Gujarati language with them, communicate, and they become fluent in speaking. And they can even, you know, share their experiences. Like my father-in-law was very big in storytelling, and he would
Mm,
tell his life experience stories to my kids, and they were amazed by them when they were little. And even when they grew up, they used to talk to him about, oh, I used to do this, or I used to be, cook this, or he was very big on palm reading, and it was fun. Like, they actually had really good time with them growing up. And yes, it does make a big difference living
that
with
is huge.
their
Yeah.
friends.
So I just wanted to add that so that whenever Natasha has kids, then I can I just definitely had to add that.
Well, I don't think Natasha will have a choice even then of,
Down the
you
street.
know, yeah.
But I actually do talk about it a lot, that I'm grateful that it's going to be kind of similar to the setup that me and Keishan had when we were growing up, having our Aji like 4 houses down, like you said, not only like to pass the culture down, but to kind of strengthen that relationship. You just can't put a price on that. Like that was, I love my grandparents and they taught me so much, and I think I had some of the best times of my life in my childhood with them. Like staying over there after school and like just
Yeah.
hanging with them. Yeah, I think I'm glad that we're also now in a similar position where you live like down the street. So whenever we do have kids, like they get to have like that same experience.
Yeah,
So
we were just talking about it today in the car, and I was telling Dad that maybe we should buy the next car Tahoe or Suburban, and Dad was like, "No, not Tahoe, because then the strollers and the car seat and that all won't fit properly, and we want to make sure that the car is big enough."
all right, let's get back on topic.
And you know what, this is all a good part of the conversation, but then there are some families who are not that lucky enough that they would have their either grandparents or even the cultural community around them, and they still try to keep up with our culture, and they still, at home they teach their kids, and hats off to them, because it is so hard when you don't have anything surrounding you, that kind of a community. And there are parts of the US where people do live where you will not find a temple for miles and miles away, or even some sort of community, but they're living there. And for those kids and the parents, it is hard. It is hard to keep up. It is hard to keep up the language. It is hard to keep up the community or the rituals or our cultures. And
And just think about it, in those kind of situation, if you yourself are not like, the kind of the person when you were growing up, like you did a lot of puja or did a lot of rituals, and then you come here in US or any other country, and then you're like, okay, now what do I do? What do I teach my kids? And like, where do I go? And like, it becomes so um different, and I mean, like, as a parent, we want to make sure that we give our kids the right guidance, the right we pass on our heritage, we pass on our culture, and we just do the best that we can for our kids. So
It's your identity. It's like it
yeah,
teaches you where you come from, who you are, that sense of security, knowing all that. So, yeah.
I will say like one big difference from our culture to like a lot of other cultures around the world is that we have like a strong mix of religion into our culture. And that's not like normal, right? Like I feel like a lot of what we consider culture is actually part of our religion. And I would say like a lot of kids my generation are not as religious as
No.
your generation. And so like automatically some of the things that you consider culture are going to be like slowly diminishing. But that might just be from your eyes, because from my eyes, culture stems from like food, language, clothes, like values and other things outside of religion. And for me, like I would feel like I'm doing my job as long as I help carry those components onto the next generation and not necessarily focus it so much around religion. Like I'm not saying that is not important. I do think religion is important, and I believe in, praying. I believe in doing certain things and like pujas and stuff like that. But I don't think our culture should necessarily revolve around that.
Yeah, so whatever y'all do is going to be it's going to come from the point of understanding before doing something. Instead of just doing it because it was being done, you don't want to do it that way. You will do it if you understand it and if you respect it and if you agree that, okay, I want to do this.
Yeah. So the culture and the ritual are two different things. We want to separate them, because the rituals are really related to our religious beliefs and the understanding of our, following of our religion, whereas the culture is what Natasha said. It's just
I'm not
really
saying
nicely said.
Yeah,
too.
I'm not saying that we should separate it though, right? Like I just feel like our like being Gujarati, being Hindu is like a very like unique scenario where they are very much intertwined. Like the culture is very much intertwined with the religion.
Yes.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that maybe in y'all's generation, in y'all's eyes, that automatically means that the younger generation is not going to be as cultured because we're not as religious.
Yeah.
But I don't think we need to decouple the two, because there is a lot of like wonderful things that come out of that, and including values, right? Like a lot of I feel like my core values stem from Hinduism and what you've taught me and Kishan, like since we were young, right? Like teaching us that every single soul has a Bhagwan inside of them and you should treat them as such. Things like that. Like I would say like I'm very spiritual and I
Yeah.
like pass things like that along. But when it comes down to this is so weird, but I'll bring it up. But like the whole thing that, oh, you know, like when or like for example, fasting before you get married, that's like a cultural thing that I didn't do for my own wedding. Like things like, oh, when you're on your period, you can't be in front of like a mandir or a puja. Like I don't know where these reasonings or where this all stem from, right? So like to me, it's like it's kind of shameful and like weird to women as a whole, like to kind of enforce that principle time after time. Of course, it might be like a religious thing that I don't understand, and by all means, like if some people want to practice that, then that's up to them. But it's like small things like that, like from my generational standpoint, like I don't see why that's so important to keep passing down, like small things, you know.
Small things, yeah, I understand. I mean, like there are times when certain days I'll call them up or text them, "Hey, do not eat meat today. Absolutely, do not eat meat today. And do not ask me questions. Just don't eat it."
I mean, we'll try, but it's just like I'm
Yeah,
not gonna do. I already know I'm not gonna do that with my kids. I'm gonna be like, whatever. It's not gonna make a difference.
No, I do that only once a year for Diwali. That's it. Just one day. And it's also because it's actually out of respect. Like you, when Diwali is a big day, you just kind of we've always followed that tradition again, and that's not like not knowing why you're doing it. It's just that you respect by not eating any. You're harming animals. Basically, that's how you look at it. So you don't want to do that on the day of Diwali. And that's one of the reasons why that's just one day in a year. I always make sure that I call Ria Sanji and tell her to.
Yeah, I think when it's like limited to like really big events like that, it makes sense.
Yeah.
We never say no, right? Like if my mom texts me and I eat, like we'll do it. But at the same time, like I
mean,
know when
even I think I'd tell you guys.
But I'm saying like when I have kids, I'm not gonna be looking at the calendar, the Indian calendar to see what day is this. Can I eat meat? I'm not gonna be doing that. So
yeah. It's a little that's where the thing is, like, you know, I think we maybe lost 20% or 25% of our heritage, I would say, and now maybe you guys will do a little bit less than us, and then maybe after your generation it'll be even a little less. And I mean, like, that's the way it is, and I feel like we all try our best to take it forward, and but
do you think though, as an immigrant, you kind of signed up for this? Like you moved here to give your children, like your future children, the opportunity to kind of have that melting pot experience. So we are very much so American and very much so Indian at the same time. So like it's just bound to happen, right? Like, and especially as people start marrying outside of Gujaratis, like that's just gonna get more and more like American. But I think as long as like we pass on what's important when it comes to values, like that should be like the only thing that really like matters at the end of the day, right?
But you know, to that effect, to that point, I'm gonna say that I have seen marriages where not necessarily intercaste or interracial marriages or anything like that, even same race marriages, same religion marriages. The husband and wife, once they have kids, they kind of start going back to their roots. It's, you know, it's like because they want their kids to to
Even
start
though
learning
they did
things.
not learn it, they still
Yes,
want their kids
they
to
do go back.
know.
In some
Yeah.
cases, I mean, there are always
Yeah.
exceptions, but yeah, in some
Yeah.
cases you lose whatever you've learned, and you kind of just adapt, new things, new lifestyle. But some of the cases they do go back.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And that's
And
the
it's
beauty of
that
it.
parenting instinct, right? You want
Yes,
your kids to learn
exactly.
everything
Yeah.
about who you are, where you're from.
Correct.
And Natasha, to your point, that what did you think when you came here, and what did you wanted to do with your kids? Actually, at the time when we came in, there was kind of some sort of movement was going on among the Indian community, like we can't lose our culture, we have to keep our culture going, and all that vibe
Yeah.
around, like, it kind of forced you, no, 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 they need to know this, they need to learn our language, they need to do this, they need to do that. In fact, if you go back to India, and you feel like a lot of Indians have lost, that sense of
Mhm.
culture
Yeah.
these days. I mean, we truly embrace the Diwali time. Like, we want to do things during the Diwali. We do our rangolis. We're gonna do. We make our sweets, and we kind of follow that tradition. That, hey, if there is a Diwali function, and we should be all home. We should be with our families and everything. Why? Because we're trying to keep up with that culture. When I hear most of the Indians these days in India, when there is Diwali vacation, they all go out and
Yes.
they are on vacation. So there is no sense of getting family together during that time.
Nobody's home to welcome Lakshmi ji.
Nobody's home to welcome Lakshmi ji. In fact, they're going out to spend Lakshmi ji, right? So it's like, wait a minute, when did that change? Like,
Yeah.
we're still keeping up with it, and over there, they're kind of losing it, and that's really, really sad.
It is.
Because when you go to India, the biggest thing that you feel is the hospitality, the love, the family surroundings, which is, I feel like we have it more here. Then there must be some families. There has to be, love and togetherness over there too. But it's unfortunate that some of it is still, it started going down.
Yeah, they
And
become more and more Americanized. That's the thing.
yeah, because they want to follow Western, and we want to go back to our roots,
And
and
that's
Yeah,
probably because
we want
they're
to
they're
continue
already, no
keeping.
matter what, they're surrounded by those things. So it's
yeah,
like because they're in it every single year, every single month, every single hour. So I guess when they get an opportunity, they just want to run away from it for a bit.
yeah,
And
Maybe
because we are
kind of
so
like
far, yeah,
yeah.
we want to hold on to it.
yeah.
And kind of a feeling of taking it for granted. I mean, if you're not gonna teach your kids, then it's not gonna stay forever on an everyday, it is, especially in the big city areas. I'm sure it is really down to earth on the areas where it town and the rural area, but whereas there's big cities, I think even the kids, they're more speaking English, they're forced to
Yeah.
speak English in schools, outside, social media, everywhere. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're struggling with the language too, as the generations are going to carry forward,
Yeah,
because
probably
it,
so, probably so.
yeah.
But anyways, this has been a really interesting topic, and I'm sure we can go on and hours and
Oh
hours
yeah.
on it, and it never ends. But I want to say I truly appreciate you all coming on to the show,
Same.
and this is going to be I guess, our norm, and hopefully you enjoy, all our audiences. I want to say that you all enjoyed this episode, and we hope to bring different topics every week, and our panel might be changing every now and then. We'll be having
Natasha, will you be
different.
there next Monday?
I will not.
It's gonna be Ria next Monday, so we'll have different younger person every week so that we get the
Mhm.
different point of view and their views and ideas about our culture or any whatever topic we chose to talk on. But with that said, thank you very much again. And this is your host, Arti Solanki. And we'll listen to us back on next week. And just like, subscribe, or whatever it's to be done on podcasts. I don't know. Follow, I guess. Follow. All righty. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
It was fun.